In 1990, the Danish Cultural Ministry gave John a lifetime stipend for being a jazz mentor. And with that money, he was able to come to California. And as Tony said, Tony and I and Margaret were down at the radio program, and John said a soothsayer brought him here. But in reality, he came because his ex-wife got a Fulbright teaching scholarship, and he came to help settle his two daughters here. He got to Davis with the intention of spending a little time settling the family in and then going back. When he got to Davis, he found this very receptive group of musicians. He liked the weather, he liked the food, he liked the vibe, and so he stayed, and he became part of the social musical fabric of this community and Sacramento, the Bay Area. So in 1991, we have this cat who's played with John Coltrane, Archie Shepp, all of these famous people, John Lennon for that matter. He ends up in Davis, and he wants to stay. So he does, and he's a musician, he wants a practice band. So he puts up an ad downtown advertising for musicians. He only wants females to apply. The only female that applied was living with him, his girlfriend at that time, Marguerite Nauber. And they formed a band called the Coyote Ensemble, which then became the John Tchicai and the Archetypes, and the three fine people back here were part of that band. John Tchicai and the Archetypes, part of the Archetypes. While John was in Davis, he did a lot of teaching. He actually started a prison band at CMF Medical Facility, and he worked with prisoners for 4 years, running a prison band. He worked in schools. He used to come to my classroom frequently. One day was music day, and the kids, I teach 5th grade, and the 5th graders had just got their instruments. They didn't know how to play them, barely put them together. And John saw these instruments when he walked in, his eyes lit up, and he says, "Oh, we'll play together." And I said, "Well, they don't really know how, John." And he says, "We all have music inside of us." And so John went to each child and had them put their instrument together and play whatever they thought sounded the best. And then he started moving them around the room into groups. And the kids that weren't in the band, and myself, we became the rhythm section. And Marguerite was there, and she was working with the rhythm section. And pretty soon, John had that group of kids who couldn't play a song with their one-note songs going around the room. And those kids left that day so high that they had made music, and they didn't know John was, they knew a little bit of the biographical business, but they really didn't know about John. John stayed with us here until 2001, and in 2001 he decided it was time for him to move on for a number of reasons that I won't go into, but he decided it was time to go back to Europe. He moved to France and performed in Europe a lot. Used to venture over to New York, Chicago, and then he suffered a stroke in June of 2012, and died in October of 2012. When John left us, but the music didn't leave us. I would like to read something here that a local musician, Joey Viscardia, said today. "The concert celebrates a really important part of Davis music history as it relates to the rest of the world. Once upon a time, a giant came to live among us and showed us that everyone has music inside of us. And John did. John brought the music out of all of us. He worked with, he taught some classes at UC Davis. I know there's people in the audience who performed with him in that group. He formed the Davis Improv There's people in the audience that played in that, and he really became a major force in the life of the city of Davis. And we were really fortunate to have had him here. And so thank you all for coming and celebrating the spirit of John Tchicai. I'd like to introduce 3 former members of his band, The Archetypes. Jeff Simmons on bass. Andrew Wittenberg on drums. Mark Boyd on